Hi, I'm Marc and welcome to the second season of Get to the Joke. And I could not think of a better way to start out our second season than with none other than Jake Mattera as our first guest. Jake has written for Conan. He's been to all the major comedy festivals like Big Sky and the Boston Comedy Festival. He's one of the two hosts of the very funny podcast Stand Up Guys, and he just dropped his debut album, A Soft One, which reached #2 on Amazon. Definitely worth checking out. So please, enjoy this conversation with Jake, who's as funny as he is nice, and please subscribe to this channel. Now, let's get to the joke.
To movie night at the Trocadero, right? If you've never been, it's a rock club and a standing room only. So what they do is they rent a bunch of plastic folding chairs that could maybe hold the weight of an American Girl doll, and they set them up, and they pull down this projector. And the movie of the night was Revenge of the Nerds. So you can get an idea for the body type. Yeah, hefty, okay. Movie starts about 5 minutes in. Behind me, I just hear They stop the movie, they turn on the lights, they're like, what happened? Is everybody okay? Some guy fell through his chair. And I was like, ha, what a doofus. So relieved it wasn't me. You know? The guy was fine. The chair will never walk again. They help him up to get him a new chair, they start the movie again. A couple minutes later, over here, somebody else falls through their chair. This time they don't even stop the movie. And now everybody's glancing back at me, like I'm their horse. And I can feel the chair giving, too. It was just like a little plastic atlas, like, I got you! I got you! Like I was trying to impress a girl chair nearby. It's like, it's not heavy! And it was, the whole experience was just horrible. And like at that point, I'm trying to do like that thing you do in public restrooms where you like hover over the seat, you know? But I don't have the cord strength. So then option B is just spilling my weight out on the chairs next to mine, like I'm Alex Mack. You know? Trying to be as weightless as possible. My wife gets up, she's like, I'm getting some popcorn, you want anything? I'm just like, no! Unless they have balloons, then get all the balloons you can. They said, Revenge of the Nerds, it's listed as a comedy. Feels more like a horror. It was like, I don't, like, it was scary for me, but I was that chair's Vietnam. I'm seeing Trocadero staffers run, like, bringing fresh chairs, carting off the mangled ones. And all around me in the darkness, for the next 90 minutes, all I'm hearing is It just sounded like people were being raptured.
Hey!
Hey, Marc.
What's up, buddy? How you doing? I know this looks very intimidating. I apologize. I got a new camera. Want to try it out, so for this. So how are you doing, man?
You're doing great. Congratulations on the new camera. That's exciting. Yeah, we've been. I've been working from home. I switched jobs in the middle of the pandemic.
Nice.
So I've been working from home since November, but that's going to change very soon. And my wife, unfortunately, got laid off at the beginning of.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, she was like, her company had like a ton of layoffs as soon as this thing happened.
Because of the pandemic. That was the reason.
I think it was like a combination of things, but the pandemic didn't help.
Oh, geez, I'm sorry to hear that, dude. That sucks.
But no, it's all good. So yeah, she's been basically taking care of James, and we've tried to just enjoy all this family time as much as we can.
Good.
With everything going on. Yeah.
People keep misassuming that your stand-up career started at the later part of being in Temple University. But I found a line that included in 2007 that you create a bucket list. And one of those items on the bucket list was to try stand-up comedy. So
yeah.
So why a bucket? So if I do my math correctly, you're 31 or will be 31. Is that correct?
I am 33.
33. Okay.
Yeah.
And so why, as in 2007, did you decide to do a bucket list? You know, being so young, and why did stand-up comedy happen to get? Well, I think you said 20 items were on there. How did it get one of the precious 20 spots?
You know, I think it's so embarrassing. I'm an idiot, as you know. And I think I just saw that movie, The Bucket List. I was like, oh, what's a bucket list? And like, maybe I should make a bucket list. And, it was like a thing that, like, in between songs, like my band's practice and stuff like that, I'd always just, like, joke around and just, like, make everybody laugh. I was like, oh, maybe one day I'll give it a shot. And then I found the list a couple years later, and I was like, oh, shit, let's try it. And yeah, that was that.
But I guess what got you to put that on the list? Like, how did you even think that was something that was even possible to do? Let alone, like. I
didn't think like being a stand-up. I was like, oh, I'll just try it once, and that's that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, I did it. Yeah, I did stand-up comedy that one time. I did not expect it to like have that rush effect that it has, and then hook me instantly.
That's awesome, though.
Yeah,
like that's really cool to hear that happened like pre-college, like high school era. That would have been something that you had done. So I mean, I look at your career, and you have lived a very full comedy life. And you worked on Conan, you worked on Preston and Steve. You have been a regular at the two top Philadelphia comedy clubs. You've been to Blue Sky twice. I've never heard of anybody being to Blue Sky twice except for yourself. You have been a semi-finalist or a finalist in Philly's Funniest since 2014. You've been in the Boston Comedy Festival, and these are all goals for most people. And at 33 years old, and the Upright Citizens Brigade that you've been a part of. I mean, you check a lot of boxes, and I think this kind of persona that you give off is this kind of silly guy, kind of the silly nice guy, but there's a real big drive in you, and that's kind of where I want to focus and kind of tease out your habits here and how you write and how you pursue some of these things.
Sure.
But kind of to get back to kind of the beginnings. You were in a band you just mentioned. And you go to Temple and you take a comedy writing class. It seems like you knew from an early age that you wanted to be in some kind of performing arts, whether it was music, possibly comedy, like general comedy, maybe not specifically stand-up comedy, but it could be late night, it could be improv. What's going on there with that? Were your parents theatrical, or was it like the group of friends you hung out with? Were they big comedy like fans, or what was it that got you into this?
I hung out with a lot of dropouts and stuff like early on. Like we would just like skateboard and stuff and just like be kind of crazy. And then I came up in that whole Jackass era. And before that, like as a little kid, I think it was always like wanting to be like, a rock star was like number one, right? Like that. And then I saw the movie Young Guns and wanted to be an actor for 10 minutes. And then like I remember a couple of friends of mine in elementary school were making like their own little version of Saturday Night Live. And they would make it, and it was like the funniest thing to me, and I would just kill to be a part of it. And I got in just at the tail end, so like they stopped doing it like 2 episodes later. So like that didn't necessarily like satisfy my desire to do it,
Yeah.
And then in high school I was too afraid to like do theater or anything like that. I did stage crew, and that's where I met my wife. But like, in terms of performing, I wanted to be a wrestler. I wanted to be a rock star. I wanted to be a rapper. And then very, very, very short period of time. And then
That's awesome.
And then I was like, all right, well, it's rock star. Clearly I'm going to be a rock star. And that didn't happen.
So I guess so you had all these ambitions. Were your parents on board with this then? Were they like supportive of this? Or was it like, oh, this is a nice hobby for Jake? Like, this is something that it's nice that he's getting friends out of this, but we don't seriously want him pursuing this. Like, what were their thoughts on this very early stage interest in performing arts?
I think they were always supportive. They were never like, you shouldn't do that. They were just like, yeah, go for it. Why not? Oh yeah, you're good. And then like they were encouraging. So there's a good support system, which I now realize all of it was a lie.
Well, I was going to say that, because then you go to Temple, which is a very good school, and now you're back doing stand-up. Was there pushback then at that point? Oh, he actually is serious about getting into comedy. Let's maybe pump the brakes. Was there anything like that?
No, they were just like, live your life, dude.
Okay.
Like, we're here, we'll support you. They used to come to like my band shows back in the day, and comedy was like a welcome surprise to them, because they were like, all right, this is way earlier than staying out to 2 a.m. for a 4-hour set while you guys play like Take on Me over and over again.
Well,
so they were like, they were happy.
Sorry, well, I was going to say, so it seems to me like all these things that you were pursuing, all these things that you being a wrestler, being a rapper, these are all pretty solo endeavors. A rock band, not so much, that's more a group, but I understand you were a guitarist for the band, right? You weren't,
Of course, I was the show pony.
What was the need to be the focal point? That seems to be why you settled in, of all these things that you've done, stand-up comedy has been the most time that you spend in any single one of them. So why is it that being the focal point, consuming 100% of attention seems to be where you best fit? Is there a lack of that at an earlier stage in your life?
I think so. I don't want to sound cliche, but it's like that whole I'm a middle child. So
okay.
I feel like I'm the only boy in between 2 girls. And I got plenty of like attention, to an extent. But I think there was something there, that I didn't get. Nothing like that I resent my parents or family for, but it was just something that, I don't know, early on, I guess, just set the course and changed my whole life to like always crave this kind of attention.
Okay. I get that. So let me ask you this then. Was there something with like where your siblings was being funny or being kind of the center of attention? Was that kind of your competitive advantage in the family, where your sisters both academically talented or athletically talented, were things that you didn't excel at, so what you excelled at was way different than what they excelled at? I guess so. That's I never really thought of it that way.
Because my sister played both sisters played like a million sports, and as I got older, I kind of dropped them. I just know from an early age, like I used to have like this is long before stand-up comedy was a goal, and before the Jackass era. I was like a big fan of Tom Green.
Okay.
Do you remember?
Oh,
I'd always carry around this little radio. I'd listen to like that Adam Sandler CD with all those songs that they're all going to laugh at you and all that stuff. And I had this little boombox. I'd always put a blank cassette in there and just go around and interviewing people and my family, and just like holding a boombox to their face, because like there wasn't a mic. There was a mic on the boombox. So like, I got a bunch of cassettes from my parents' house that I've yet to like find a cassette player, but. It's like our trip to like Disney, and I'm just like interviewing random strangers as we stop at gas stations, and just like trying to be entertaining, and
Well, that's awesome.
It was fun.
So now let's roll that into you. Now you're in Temple, okay? Obviously, very good school. And the last semester, you take a comedy writing class. Now, was this kind of like, was this a comedy writing class that you could only do in your last semester? Is this something like when you were a freshman that you've been wanting, or like? How did you get involved in a comedy class? And then as I find out, you failed it you failed the course or whatever in comedy writing.
Yeah, I was pretty close to failing the course.
I mean, I hate to say it this way, but how'd you get the balls to sign up for a comedy writing class and then still keep your chin up after getting failed in it, not let that deter you, and then become a top 10 comic in Philadelphia, today? How'd you get into that?
Thanks for thinking that of me. I mean, I could put myself, at the bottom of 1,000 people right now. What happened was all the good comics quit, and it's like a Royal Rumble. I'm left standing, and I accept that. No, I think so. Really, it wasn't stand-up comedy wasn't that prevalent in my life. I owned one George Carlin special, the Jammin' in New York as a kid, because a friend showed me, and I thought, oh, this is awesome, and this is kind of cool, and he's saying the F word. That's the only thing that I liked about it. I didn't think he was some genius at the time. I can respect what he does now, obviously. But I liked I liked Dane Cook. I think he was the first comedian that I got,
Dude, that's not embarrassing.
It was funny him. It was Nick Swartzen.
Oh yeah,
an album that So those were the comedy albums I really that's what I was into, and it wasn't in college where I was all right, I'm gonna wait one of these days I'm gonna take this class. It was literally my family's hoarders, right? They keep everything, so I was going through an old notebook or something in the basement, and I found the bucket list that I made a couple years prior. I was oh, stand-up comedy. I was maybe I should. And then I was in my head, and I was picking classes, and I saw a comedy class. I was you know what? Let's do it. Let's see how this goes. And I did awful. It was a lot tougher than I thought. They covered so many different types of humor over the semester, from caption cartoon writing to we didn't really cover sitcom writing, but it was more just it was gag writing, which I don't even I know that's still a thing, but it's fine. And I didn't do well at it at all. I had funny ideas, I just couldn't execute them. Still kind of my problem now. Didn't do well. I was all right, gave that a shot. Forget it. That was probably 2010, 2011. And then shortly after, I got an internship at CONAN, and I loved it there. I loved CONAN. I watched every single episode. And
let me stop you there. I don't want to get too, because because that's great. I enjoy hearing this kind of stuff about you. And before we begin the Conan O'Brien writing staff job, you got it because someone came to Temple whose kid worked for Conan, and you just you said you loved Conan.
You really did your research, man. Wow.
So you loved Conan, and you reached out to him. He was kind of apprehensive about this really overexcited kid about getting on Conan, but somehow he got you in touch with his son. You pled your case. You thought it wasn't going to go well, but you ended up getting the job as an intern for Conan. Let's just talk about that period between you met this guy and you show up at Conan, the Conan show at TBS Studios for the first time. What if you had to offer advice to someone and say, this is what I did. This is how this is how I persuaded somebody. I was this kid who took one course who failed it in comedy writing, and now I'm working for the Conan show. What was that spiel that you gave that guy's son that convinced them? And then there was a woman, I think, with TBS or maybe the Conan show that you talked to. What was the spiel that you gave that maybe could, if there's someone that watches this, later, be oh, maybe these are some of the points that I want to touch on, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Obviously, passion for the show would be a big one. But what are some of the other things you kind of remember? You can kind of walk me through that conversation you had with both of them. Some of the things you pitched them.
I think with the Greg Kassoff was the guy who worked for Conan. He was a stage manager. I think what I did was I went in without a real agenda. I had already applied to intern at Conan before that, but it wasn't my goal to kind of work in oh, bring me on board, hire me. That wasn't. I wouldn't even. The guy doesn't even know me,
Yeah.
So literally, I just wanted to talk to him about what it was like to work with Conan and what he did there and like what it was like day to day and like who he met and like how he interacted with Conan and the writers and like how things played out backstage, like like those comedy bits and like all that kind of stuff. And it was just a genuine interest and sincerity talking with him about like his job. And then he's like, "Oh, well, you should think about like interning out here." And I said, "Well, yeah, I did apply." And he's like, "Oh, well, send me your resume. Like, I'll I'll forward it along." I was like, "No, you don't have to do that. I just wanted to talk to you."
Yeah.
Honestly, I was talking him out of it. I was like, "Please don't." And I just like, no, honestly, just talking to you was enough. Thank you. Because he called me at like I don't know if I said this in any other interview. He called me at like a really rough time. Like,
well, how so?
My grandma, my mom, who like I grew up with, she like lived with us, was in the ICU and was looking very bad. And so I got this phone call. I got a voicemail like right before I left the hospital that night. And then my grandma's doing fine. She's still alive today.
Oh, good.
So everything's good. But I mean, it was like very serious at that moment. And I remember like I was just at my like lowest low, and like to walk out to my car, recognize number I didn't see a voicemail from, listen to it, and it's like, "Hey, Greg from Conan. I'm on my way home, so if you want to give me a call, like I'm around for like the next like half hour." And that's when we did the call.
Yeah.
And just like totally turned my mood around, and it was really like an amazing thing.
That's awesome.
But yeah, it was like I honestly was just like I was like, "Don't worry about it. Thank you for talking to me. I appreciate it." I said I applied, but I never sent him my resume.
Yeah.
Instead, like he just like he remembered my name because I guess his dad gave it to him, and just passed that along to the production coordinator, who called me like the next day.
Did you kind of pitch yourself as like an idea guy? Like, here's some of the ideas I had. Here's some things that Conan does that I like that I can expand on. Or did you pitch yourself more as I will do all the jobs that nobody wants to do just to be in that building?
That's what I did. I kind of I would never, they're professionals in like picking out the jokes and the sketches and all that kind of stuff. Like Preston and Steve, like I'd written some jingles and like done some comedy bits for them. But mostly my work was just production focused, and that's what I wanted to stick with. Like being a PA, running the Grab Coffee, like I'll get your dry cleaning. I don't care. Like I just want to be in this environment. I just want to learn and all this kind of stuff. And that's when I pled my case to the production coordinator. She was like, I thought I like was going in with like guns loaded with my like Preston and Steve on the resume and Temple University, you know, like, and she's like, nothing. She was like, nothing about your resume impresses me. And I was like, oh, like, she's like, why should I hire you? And then as I plead my case, it's like, cause I care. I will work so hard, like day and night, blah, blah, blah. While I'm pouring my heart out doing this, she's like, you can hear other people coming to her desk to like, cause she had a very busy job.
Yeah.
You can hear like her just working around me talking. And this interview happened right after Preston and Steve had shot me with a cannon full of clam chowder.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, I just stink like clam chowder, and I am like so depressed as this interview. The interview was the next morning. Yeah. But yeah, the whole thing was just like I felt the blast of a chowder cannon. It was just at an all-time low after being told like nothing impresses her on the resume. And I just pled my case. And she was right. Like when I got there, like it was like people from like Yale, Dartmouth, Stanford, USC, Boston University, University of Texas, like all these institutions, and then me as Temple University. Like, holy crap.
But so you find yourself in this situation a lot because fast forward, you're in Big Sky, you walk in and you're like, I'm the only person here without an agent. I'm going at people that work for the Daily Show. So it seems that this environment does you well. You like being an underdog. You like being kind of like the sorry sap. I hate, like, but it's what motivates you. But so do you kind of know what you said? I kind of just pitched her my thing. What do you think it was that sold her to take a chance on a guy who didn't go to Harvard, wasn't part of UCB? What was it that she was like, was it just that you knew this Greg Kozloff guy and he just said, hey, can you let this guy in? Or was it wow, of all the people we interviewed, this guy knows Conan O'Brien's show like the back of his hand, more so than I even do. Which one would you say what it is, or something totally different?
I think it was more the stage manager's help. Because I think like when I got there, like, oh wow, like Greg, like, so I think that guy Greg never made any like like a lot of people were like, oh, my niece is getting out of school, blah blah blah, and like a lot of people would push their friends and family who had an interest through, and whereas this guy, I guess, had worked for the show for a long time and just never made an ask. So it was kind of like a big deal that he made an ask. So like he carried a lot of weight. And like obviously I was like just saying like how hard I would work, and I sounded excited, enthused, and determined. And I think like it was more like 90-10 him than me on that.
Well, no, because that's
very lucky.
That seems to be something that I don't know, because you're very talented, and I know you're very humble, and will try to quip or make a quip to say you're not, but you are very talented. I think they made a great pick there. But it seems like you would almost, if you had to write an advice book, you would almost say, be aggressive in how you act. Because then, to get even the helium, it's like, yeah, it's who you know, but also be aggressive in using your network. Because you knew this person who was booking helium through the Preston and Steve show, and you reached out to them. Where most people will probably be like, oh, I'm going to back off. So have these kind of situations happened in your life? And maybe describe the helium interaction, or like some things that you like maybe can give like advice on like how to politely be aggressive.
That was like a one-time ask of like, hey, can I come do your open, like, you know, how do I get on your open mic?
Okay.
Because it was like, when I came back from California, I didn't know where comedy happened in Philadelphia, you know? Like, there wasn't like a thriving fit. That was more like, there was, the Philly Improv Theater used to be like at a place called the Shubin, right off South Street, which was like a storefront that fit 8 people. So like there was no good. It was the Laugh House and Helium, but I didn't even know about the Laugh House yet. Yeah. So I went to Helium, I think, my first time, and that ask was just like simple as like, hey, it's Jake, you know, from the press, like intern from the press. I intern from the press. Steve, we see each other all the time. I'm thinking about trying stand-up comedy. How do you sign up for the open mic? Because before, like the website instructions weren't as clear as they are now. Okay. So they're like, oh, okay, I'll get you in touch with somebody, and you'll get set up.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool, man.
So that was cool. And then like I didn't see any of that was Brad Grossman, and I don't think I saw him again for another like 3 years after. You know what I mean? Yeah. I don't think it was till after I started working the club, because like they're involved, but they're involved in big picture stuff. They're not involved in open mic or like booking local talent. They leave that to the managers who see the comedy all the time, and they trust their opinions and stuff like that.
Cool.
So
I like that story. I like it's a nice story. I do enjoy that. And so to kind of backtrack then to Conan, you mentioned, you said, this is where I learned how to be. This is a quote. This is really where I learned how to be funny and about the whole joke writing process. So you were involved with monologue. I mean, you eventually got hired as a monologue intern, which is fantastic because that's very sought after. What is it that you learned there? Because your style of writing jokes now is not monologue style. These are more personal stories of things that happened to you, not things that would do well at Conan. So what about what you learned there, I guess, pertains to how you write jokes now? I want to pull something out for you. Oh, yeah, go ahead. This is so dramatic. No. This is why I do the video thing and not like a podcast kind of thing, because I like the visual aspect of it more so than the audio part. All right. I don't know if I'm allowed to show this. So this is Marc Stoudemire exclusive, but like these are the jokes. Okay. So they like every day. Like I mean, I made myself a copy of all of them because like I wanted to learn. So I would read all the jokes, and I'm basically in this is Tuesday, April 10th. So that's 1 day's worth of jokes. That very thick packet. Okay. This is the first batch. Yeah. So there's 2 batches of jokes I have in a day. So this is the first batch of jokes, and this is the first collection that would go down to Conan around lunchtime, and he would read them all, mark them about what he liked, circle the ones he liked, and then like make changes to
like little wording things that he preferred. So this is the first batch on April 10th, 2012. You can see, did it say that? So what he would do after the lunch is he would sign it, and then he would put he would circle the number of jokes that day that he liked in the first batch.
What is it? What would you say are the mechanics that you learned to write jokes there with that packet and everything like that you still use to this day in writing jokes?
So the one thing I use is like when I'm struggling to write a new joke that I took away from the Conan process is like, and this is accessible on the internet. Laurie Kilmartin has like a list of transitions that she tweeted out that that I picked up on that the writers would use when they would submit their jokes every day. Because it was a quantity business. You got to see some really great jokes and then some jokes that were kind of like, not as great. And seeing the bad ones gave me confidence to write because I thought, oh, maybe I could write one as good as that bad one. So like taking what I take with that I still use now is just being mindful of the words I'm saying from the setup to the punchline of a joke. And a lot of my jokes tend to be short. So it's just like looking for ways to, if it's necessary, to incorporate those transitions because, it's all about word economy. And just trying to make sure, like, if I'm ever, like, if there's a story I want to tell or something, if I want to get on the topic, it's like taking a step back, remembering I call it my Conan training, and just, like, writing something out, one sentence premise, one sentence punchline.
Okay.
And use the transition and go from there and work that way.
Just a quick plug and we'll get right back to the show. Have you checked out my website, markstaud.com? It gives you a whole wealth of information to how to see me live at shows. You can catch past Get to the Joke episodes and bonus content, and you can also check out some stand-up videos from myself. Please check out my website. Again, that's markstaud.com, markstaud.com. Come see me live. Also, please, once again, subscribe to this channel, like our videos, leave a comment, I'll get back to you. Now let's get back to the joke. Cool, man.
Yeah.
So I want to touch on a point here that came up during some of the stuff I was looking for you on, and this is maybe a little more touchy subject matter, but I promise it leads into questions about your joke writing. You were giving an interview, and I'll give a shout out to the podcast Club Obscurite. And you had talked about being in a sketch on the Conan show. You finally were asked to do a sketch on the Conan show, and it involved and you were super excited. You got your hopes up, and they do makeup, and they drew a dick on your face, and it immediately you went from the highest high to the lowest low, and you had flashbacks of something you just mentioned, being on the Preston Steve show, being the guy that they shot. I think you said chili gun or clam chowder gun. They did both, by the way. So is this kind of, do you always feel like that I would say most of your jokes paint you as kind of like the butt of the joke? It's not really observational. Yes, they're personal experience, but you always kind of come out looking like the putz, like, oh, I'm the guy that returns KY jelly. I'm the guy where the chair's going to collapse on my seat. I look like Chaz Bono. What is your insecurity? Where does this insecurity lie in? Is this something that you grew up with? Were you teased because of like your weight or your appearance, or what was it that when you make it to Conan, someone draws a dick, instead of feeling happy about this dick on your face, you're going to be in a show, it immediately triggers past sadness in you. So what is that? What is that is this something that's growing up? And then I promise this is going to lead into how your jokes about how you write successful self-deprecation jokes. But kind of talk to me about this background and this sadness about maybe your appearance or what you perceive your self-image is.
So I mean, I think I've always been like a goofy person, like a kind-hearted and goofy, which I don't know if anybody's ever called themselves kind before. But
I think it's a very accurate way to say it. Yeah.
So I think like what happens is because I'm always so goofy and like joking around, I also end up being like the one in the group that like that wolf pack mentality where like the one person gets separated and gets picked on.
Yeah.
It's always been me. Like in sports, like on the wrestling team, that would always happen. When I did football, it happened. Like playing hockey, it would happen. Like it always ended up being like me that it would like the joke. People would like hone in on.
Yeah.
So when it started happening at Preston and Steve, like, I was trying to be as like cool as possible.
Yeah.
And like try to get as far away from that stuff as I possibly could. And I think like, once I like started to like change my mentality to like lean into that,
Yeah.
rather than away from it, it's like I noticed it worked for comedy, and I was in such like an insecure headspace because of like a bad work environment, like that screwed me up like a couple years before comedy. That like all my like self-worth was already out the window. You know what I mean?
Geez.
So,
Okay.
so just like leaning, like I remember like somebody making a joke about me. I think it was Bobby Slayton. He's like they call him the Pitbull of comedy. He was a guest on Preston and Steve.
Okay.
And I remember going in to take a picture of him because they were like, "Oh, go take a picture of him for the website." And I went to go take a picture of him, and he's like, "Look at this." He's like, "Who's this Humpty Dumpty trying to take a picture of me?"
Oh, jeez.
And like they got like a total laugh from like the couple people sitting there. But like I was so upset about that for like ever. I'm like, dude, I don't even know you, dick. Like, so I just remember like then looking back on that after like I let go of that anger, and I was just like, all right, well, you know what, like to the outside observer, that is funny. And so like at first I was like selling myself out a little bit for jokes. But I remember hearing a Ralphie May interview, who I've been told I look like.
I don't think that's true at all.
But I remember his WTF interview where he said, he was trying to always be mindful because like John Panette was like a legend before, like in terms of fat comedians.
Yeah.
He was like the fat comic. So like Ralphie May in the interview was saying like, he didn't want to be the fat comic. He wanted to be the comic who was fat. Yeah. And I remember him saying that, and I was like, okay, yeah, I can get on board with that. Like that's, I don't want to be the fat comic. I would rather be the comic who was fat.
So no, I get that, and that's a great way of looking at it. And so you mentioned that this Bobby Slayton guy, who I don't know, but you said you were angry at this one-off comment. Were you picked on a lot then as a kid because of your weight? Is this like just another person that's piled on top of you for all these years, kind of like 25 years of people just making jokes at your expense? Is that kind of bridging into comedy because you said both your sisters are super athletic, you not so much? Was it kind of like was this a way of getting positive attention for maybe some self-image hang-ups that you had, kind of thing? And
I think ultimately when I started like doing self-deprecation, I figured like what's the worst thing that like could be said about me? And just start there. So therefore it's an 8 Mile approach. You know what I mean? Like I remember seeing that movie and just like that final battle where he just says everything wrong about him. It's like, it's literally what they do in rom-coms where they're like, I know, like, remember that Dave Premiano's joke? Where he's like, I know I'm not the best looking, the kindest, but like, you list all your faults. And then, then the other person has nothing else to go on to like make fun of you. So I was like, okay, well, it's my version of sweeping the leg and, just like getting ahead of it.
Okay. Well, it's cool. I like that. So let's talk about self-deprecation jokes then, because that seems to be the meat. This is where you stand out among other comedians. Is your self-deprecation jokes are better than other comics' self-deprecation jokes. What do you do? So you just kind of mentioned what are some of the worst things people can say about me, and let me list them out. How do you write, and I guess, and how can you keep going back to that well and write new jokes without tiring out some of the old jokes? Then, like, how are you constantly coming up with material that is constantly putting you down and finding new ways of reinventing it, and then also kind of disarming the crowd then of doing that. Like, how are you doing these things?
I love the idea of just reinventing the new ways of putting myself down. Yeah, I think, so I think, like, you know, it's obviously that mentality of, like, you know, being a comic who is fat, right? So it's like knowing I have that, right? And that's the first impression is key. Like, walking in front of a room full of strangers, nobody really paid to see me. Like, even if I'm headlining a show, they're not coming for me. I mean, there might be like 2 or 3, you know, people now, but like that's tops, you know, and it's like a friend of a friend. So it's like nobody really knows me, and this is the first thing they see. So it's just like address the elephant in the room, no pun intended, and it's just like, hey, here it is, get over it. And then like, if some jokes reference that, like my weight and stuff later, good. But there's plenty of I have plenty of deficiencies for me to play on, you know, whether they're intellectual, you know, just being, you know, my insecurity of being a good husband or father and all that kind of stuff. But what I find is, like, when you put yourself in that vulnerable position, you tend to make yourself more relatable that way. Because, like, even though it's like something that's like vulnerable to me and like my personal experience, it's all like, you know, it's everybody has those same feelings. Whether they're as vocal about it is, you know, the difference, I guess.
Okay. No, that's great to hear. And I guess, like, so how do you then write those jokes? Okay, so like, how do you make yourself vulnerable? Because the way, I mean, you know, from sets I've seen, from the set that you sent me, and I'm like, I really only want to reference the set that you sent me because I'll be using that for this. You know, the jokes that are in there referencing your appearance right off the bat. You make that joke about Roseanne, you know, being from Roseanne. Then you talk about the joke that you close with, which is usually a comic best joke, is this Trocadero chair joke, which wouldn't work if you were thin. So how do you make yourself vulnerable and write it on paper, which you do? I've seen your notebook. So what do you do to kind of make yourself as vulnerable as you can to kind of mine these new gems then to create new jokes?
I mean, I think it's just like turning off that filter in your brain that says like other people are going to see this, other people are going to hear it. Like just turning that off and allowing myself to get down on paper how I truly feel, and working with that, and then being honest about the situation as best I can, and looking for ways to insert jokes that aren't, you know, that are funny, but you know, try to shy away from the easy, low-hanging fruit jokes and just like try to write something like of merit, you know? Okay. So like, for instance, like the Trocadero story, it's all about me sitting in a plastic chair, and that chair feeling like it's going to break at any second. And they start like breaking all around me, and I'm like experiencing this, like my anxiety is like through the, like my blood pressure's going nuts. And I think like it was more a joke about that fear of that, which I've heard skinny friends talk about when they sat in like a wobbly chair or everybody sat in a chair that's not going to make it. So it was more about that. And then the icing on the on the fat cake is my weight in the situation, and the truth of like people, like I mean I was like one of the biggest dudes there, so like have people looking back at you in that moment, it's not a good feeling.
Well, no, and I don't want to keep belaboring this point, but it's like, this is what I appreciate about it. I am incapable of getting to that vulnerable stage, and that's kind of what I'm trying to tease out from you. I don't know why I have this mental deficiency that allows myself to be vulnerable. So I'm trying to see, like, how do you obviously, you know, this thing with Bobby Slayton, these things trigger you when people make fun of your appearance, and now you're trying to almost push against that and make fun of your own things that have made you angry. Like, how do you get to be vulnerable for stand-up comedy? Because obviously if some 15-year-old kid were to say the things that you say about yourself in your joke, you would feel very bad about yourself. So how do you get to that? How do you break that barrier? And then what are some things that are vulnerable that you will never discuss? Like for instance, maybe is there something with like a family relative that you won't ever discuss because it's too vulnerable, or maybe it's like a situation with your wife that's too, it will only be self-image vulnerability, or will there be other vulnerabilities that may affect other people? Then sorry, that's a lot of verbal salad at you, but
so in terms of material that I won't touch, it's never for like a situation of, like if it's about a family member, I'd want the family member I know to hear the joke before I do it and make sure they're okay with it. I'm gonna regret saying that one day. This clip will come back to haunt me. But I think when I started doing self-deprecation, it was because early on I don't like making fun of people. I don't like making fun, and that's like what comedy is making fun of things. But it's like, you know, in comedy there has to be a victim, and so why not just like turn that gun on myself and, you know, take that bullet, because there's always going to be a victim in comedy, and I can take it.
Okay.
Because I feel like I've heard horrible stuff said to me, and I've like thought horrible stuff about myself. So
let me stop you right there. You said you weren't bullied, but then you said, I've heard horrible things said about me. You talked about a terrible work experience, talked about the Preston Steve incident. So not bullies, but is this just a constant theme of no matter where you go, people are, you're paranoid that people might be saying things, I mean, because of people actually saying things about you, or are you now constantly thinking that people are making quips at your behalf then, if you weren't bullied?
Yeah. I mean, oh man.
Be vulnerable with me, Jake. Be as vulnerable with me as you are in your joke books.
I know. I'm like, there's things that I want to say that I'm like censoring myself. Like for instance, being around little kids, like everybody says like little kids can be like the meanest and like cruelest. So like I remember a summer being a camp counselor and all these like 6-7-year-olds just going in on me. I'm like, oh man, this sucks. and just like so, you know. There's instances like that. Like I have a cousin who is mentally challenged. And I remember we threw him a birthday party at this rec center, and one of his buddies was there from the home that he's in. And I'm like trying to play like basketball. Like he's just rolling around in a wheelchair. But it's, you know, trying to play basketball with him. I just remember just grabbing my side and like squeezing as hard as he can and like holding it. Like, I mean, there's a lot there too, you know? And he's just like, yeah, you're fat. And I'm like, all right, dude, like even you're observing this. You know what I mean? Yeah. So like there's only, and then the Bobby Slayton incidents, there's all these little incidents like that have happened. Like I remember while I was working at Conan, you know, somebody, the kid I was sharing a room with, I remember waking up one morning and hearing him talk to the other roommates and friends they had over, because like our door was cracked, and they're just talking about like, because I snore and stuff like that, and they're like, I don't know, he's just going to have so many health problems and he's going to die an early death. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, I'm in the other, like I can hear you guys.
That's crazy.
It's like it's never bullying. Yeah. Like, but it's always like, you know, it's stuff that hurts.
But obviously you're very sensitive, as you should be very sensitive about it, because having all these things people say about you, has ever one of those things that someone said about you made it into your act? Maybe you turned it something like, is there anything someone says like, man, that would, like, just like you talked about the you know, your cousin's birthday party, is there any way for that to get into your act then? Or is it when it comes from somebody else, it's too personal, too sensitive that it can't get, I'm not there yet. I'm not that mature. It has to be something that I recognize in myself to get into my act.
No, I think it's there. I think like if I can find the right joke for it, if I can make it like the vessel that it goes in funny enough, then it's in. Okay. Immediately.
Is there an example of that happening? Is there an example of something said to you that's in your act?
Yeah, there is. I'm having trouble because it's like it's one of those things where you say it so many times out loud, it like lessens its power. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I get that. So let me rephrase and ask you this then, and maybe how do you break that barrier then, and how are you one of these guys that when I see you and you're vulnerable on stage and I look up to someone like that to have that kind of maturity, have that kind of self-recognition, and then not only have all that, like have that, but then also have the funniness to tie that in. Yeah. How do you do that? How do you break these barriers so that like it doesn't like it? Are your jokes when you write these premises and you write a punch? Is there a lot of sadness in these joke books because of just writing a premise and then not having a punchline, or like how do you get to those? How do you break those barriers to kind of make that joke then?
I mean, I sent you a picture of like. It was like my Seinfeld picture of all my books on the ground. Yeah. And it's like in that I probably have like maybe an hour of material that I'm actually like, that I'll do on stage. And whereas I probably have another 3 to 4 hours of stuff that I haven't really even touched the surface on yet. Okay. That I could still continue to work on. In terms of being vulnerable, I think it's just like, with the self-deprecation thing early on, like leaning so hard on myself and making fun of myself. At first, it was like it was a guard thing to get that out of the way. But then after I got like the first 1 or 2 out of the way, it's like, okay, time for you to actually talk about yourself. Otherwise, you're just pandering to like, you know what I mean? So with being vulnerable, I think it's just something. I think I'm a vulnerable person to begin with. I'm kind of like a natural oversharer. Yeah. So it's like finding out what there is to share, and maybe I do it. Maybe I do it in a way that like tries to like get the crowd kind of like on my side first, and then I try to find the punchline. Because I think I heard somewhere that like. I can't remember who said it, but they talked about comedy's kind of like all about justice, you know? So if you have somebody like saying something terrible to someone, it's like you want to find, like, you want that like tension release. Like, that's why jokes when people like, so I said this, like, works so well. Like having that perfect, like, what you should have said thing works so well in stand-up because it's like a justice to the premise. Yeah.
I like that way of thinking. I never heard that before. That's awesome. That's cool. It's like I wrote down 2 notes here, and it's things that you said, and some in comedy there has to be a victim, and then you just said that jokes have to just serve a justice point. So there's almost you do take like this. The little guy has to be the hero. The guy who has constantly, in your case, this guy who's constantly grown up with, people poking fun at you for your appearance or what it happens to be. You get your just desserts at the end. That's kind of, I'm seeing a lot of, balancing the seesaw at the end of that. Is that the theme of your jokes? It's kind of like, hey, the setup is, hey, the jokes will be at my expense, but then at the very end, you come out as like the hero, kind of good everyday kind of guy that people can relate to, that people root for. Is that kind of where you go with your jokes?
I think that's kind of that. I mean, I don't think I think about them that deeply, but yeah, I think ultimately that's kind of, if you had to give it a theme, I think that's a strong way of categorizing it. Because I think it's just, you just want to be as funny as possible, right? So sharing those personal moments with a crowd of things that hurt, and then finding a way to like combat that and like have a funny line, and it's like it's just playing with the emotions, It's that roller coaster of like drawing them in with like a sincere premise, which I've heard is like you want to be as genuine as you can with your premise. So that's what's more genuine than being vulnerable and sharing things about yourself. So then using that as the setup and then releasing it with the laugh line.
Okay. That's great. And so let me ask, do you hope to maybe one day move away from self-deprecation jokes, or is that always something that you want to make sure, is that kind of like your bread and butter? Is that kind of where if you want someone that you want to be known for, like how Jim Gaffigan's kind of known for that kind of humor, Seinfeld for observational, do you kind of want to be, hey, that's the self-deprecation guy? Is that, or do you want to eventually move away from that then?
Yeah, no, I think, I mean, I don't think it's an active choice of like wanting to be self-deprecating. I think that's just a thing that comes through. If I could get away from it, great. If not, that's fine too. I'm not like trying to coast on anything.
Yeah, no.
Like, but it's, I do like trying to challenge myself to be like more observational. Excuse me, and talking about different things in different lights, and it's always been like a challenge to like. I know, like if like a set's not going well, I will start to like self-deprecate even more on myself in the moment.
Okay.
So it's like those kind of things to be cognizant of and not use that as a crutch.
Okay.
So it's a thing that I'm like trying to be more aware of in the joke writing process to get away from. But I got to go where the laugh is also going.
Yeah.
So
I get that.
Yeah.
Now let me ask you this then. Let me see if I can ask it honestly and tactfully. Do you feel trapped in your self-deprecation jokes? Meaning, if I gave you a pill to turn your body image into whatever you want to be, would you take it, knowing that you may cut out a half hour worth of jokes that you spent 8 years working on? Or would you be like, that's too, I gotta stay in kind of where this character that people expect these jokes to be relatable to?
Oh, that's funny. I know. I don't view myself as a character, so yeah, I would take that immediately.
Okay.
So I would want to have that healthier life and spend more time with my family.
No. I mean, I'm just interested to know if
10 years off my life or 10 more years. I think I'm probably 10.
I was just interested.
Years.
I didn't know like if the jokes meant so much to you that there'd be no way that you would want I worked so hard for these jokes that I couldn't possibly give them up for any reason. They wouldn't make sense if I was a 130 or whatever.
I get that mentality for sure, like that, like, these are your precious jokes, because like I have that too deep down, but also you can always write another joke, and if you can't, you're in trouble, like that's what we do. So if you can't write another joke, then focus on that. You know what I mean?
Well, that's great, man. That was great to hear. I love hearing this stuff, dude. So let's talk about your joke writing. Let's talk about your writing routine, how you write jokes, which is kind of where this body is at. We're past the hour mark already. So, using the event at the Trocadero, going to the movie The Trocadero, kind of walk me through from when you noticed in your head that this could be a joke to the clip that you sent me. Can you walk me through that process, like recognizing that this is funny and not only just being funny, but being funny and relatable for people to start laughing? And then how did you get that down on paper? How did you work it out? How'd that kind of stuff go? Yeah.
So, I mean, that joke is so old. It's so old, and I couldn't figure it out. So I put it away for a couple years and came back to it. So I think that incident happened in like 2014, 2015. I was with, I think I was with Eddie Gallagher. Cricket. Comedy. He took me, he was like, hey, do you want to go to this thing? I'm like, no, sorry, I don't care. And he's like, but it's a free ticket. I was like, all right, I'll go. They're like, yeah, the guy from the Revenge of the Nerds, like the cast members were there too, so I thought that was pretty cool. I was like, oh, it's cool. It was like they were going to do a Q&A afterwards. And I remember my buddy, my singer Bubba at the time, also went with his friends, and I knew he was going, which is why I decided to go. And they were sitting in the row in front of us. And as soon as like the movie started, just like I say in the joke, people started going through chairs. I think like a total of 4 chairs broke. But that's 4 chairs too many. And they were that plastic chair, and it was a sold out show. So like I was just losing because I'm sitting in the middle, and I was clearly bigger than both the guys who went through before, and just like having that like panic of like, you know, at any minute this thing could go.
Yeah.
And it's like there's the cast members right there. It's like I can't get up, and like it would look like I'm storming the stage or something like that. So it was just like I have to sit through this in agony, and it turned like this whole like comedy movie. Like I think a line I had before is like turned a comedy into a horror because it's just like me freaking out the whole time, and there's like I was supposed to be enjoying it, but I couldn't wait till it was over.
Yeah.
And just like after like the third or fourth chair broke, I'm like, this is comical.
Yeah.
But also I'm terrified. So
now you're with Eddie Gallagher, who's another comedian. Does he lean over to you and go, "Hey, this is something that we could use on stage," or does he? Are you kind of like? Are you guys like on the same page with this is kind of funny kind of deal, or is it like, hey, you didn't realize that this is a joke yet in the moment? You're more concerned about getting out of there, you know.
Yeah, I think we were all just in the moment, just enjoying the night. Like, wow, this is a crazy night.
Yeah.
And then like you know, I'm an oversharer.
Yeah.
I think I showed up to like the Delco open mic, and like maybe didn't prepare anything, so I just started talking about like how I went to this movie last week with the cast of the movie there, and then I started talking about the chairs breaking, and I was like, oh, mine didn't break, and then like I was like, okay, like maybe there's something there, and then like trying to play on like that kind of like you know, like just that like anxiety of like waiting for something to happen.
Yeah.
And when I decided to revisit the joke, it was after I had done this car wash joke that I'd done forever.
So I'm sorry,
like,
you said you tried it at the Delco open mic right after it happened, but then you said did it not go well? And you're like backed off. Are you getting into that right now? This is what you're getting into? Why it took so many years? Kind of thing? Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
So basically, I mean, when I took it to the Delco open mic, it was me just rambling into a microphone.
So you had nothing written down at this point. This was just still fresh in your head, and you were just spouting off at the mouth, kind of thing. And
Okay. Yeah. So I was just talking about it, and just like trying to I record all my sets. So I was just going back and listening to see if there was anything I said that I could keep from my rambling. There's a couple things that I don't think they're still in the joke now, but like, you know, I think what made the joke work so well was like my attitude. Like I was like putting myself in the joke. Like, so that being nervous and awkward kind of thing worked for me. So in the situation now, I'm revisiting the Trocadero joke a couple years later. I think the thing that made the car wash thing work was that I was so committed to being in the moment in that joke. Like when I was telling the crowd the experience, I wasn't just telling, I was like reliving the experience while it was happening. So then it was like my goal to try to make that in this joke. Okay. And then just try to tag it as much as I can with as many funny references as I could.
So let me ask you this then, because based on some of the stuff I've heard you in interviews before, you talk about if you tell the same joke over and over again, you have to keep the same enthusiasm. You mentioned that if a joke gets too stale, you'll try to switch it up a bit by doing like a new perspective or by putting some refer tags. How are you? I guess first question, do you work out material on the stage without having been written down first? Second question then is, how do you relive a moment so that you're almost flashing back like in Vietnam and reliving that experience to the stage, but then also like trying to think of tags and stuff? There's two questions there. We can answer both of those.
Yeah. So I think in terms of reliving it, I think it's a thing of just like, you know, when I try to do that in my jokes, it's actual experiences and actual feelings that I've had. So just bringing it up is trying to like recall those feelings and then convey that to the audience. And that's how, like, I mean, just trying to keep, it's like almost like, it's almost like acting, you know, it's like you're just trying to like keep hitting that mark of like what you're supposed to feel in that moment, rather than like kind of be over it and like eyes glazed over. And then the tag thing is really hard to do in that situation because like you're so in the moment. You have to be in the moment. So then coming up with tags kind of takes a back seat sometimes. With a joke like the Trocadero one, or the car wash one, where it's a story, it's like I tend to be less animated telling that joke at like an open mic where it's just comics. So then that kind of gives me, and I'm repeating it so many times at that point at a lesser excitement, and that's my way of kind of like, you know, getting through the beats that way, and then trying to find the tags along the way, you know, to the silence in the open mic room that they're in. And it's something like Chris Rock would do, where he would go try bits out monotone to see if the material was funny before taking it out on like a big world tour.
So then do you work out material on stage, or if I see you tell a joke, I am certain that Jake has written something in a notebook somewhere before he came on stage and said that? Or is it possible that it's just so fresh in your head that you don't want to write it down yet? You want to kind of work it out on stage and then go from your recording and write? What comes first, chicken or egg?
I think it's right now it's like a hybrid of both of those things, but most of the time I don't like to go on stage unless I have the bones of a joke in place.
Okay.
And if it's fishing for like that big punchline, that's fine. Like at an open mic, not at a show, obviously. That's I think that's the difference. So, yeah, like I know before the pandemic happened, I was a lot more loose with how I was delivering my jokes. And because I've told them so many times, it's like looking for different angles and different punchlines to hit it. And I started like finding lines like purposefully, which was nice. Because in the past, a lot of my riffs, my accidental riffs, is like what made it into the set.
Yeah, okay.
Like I'm very funny accidentally, but then it's like when you try to be funny, it's like not that at all, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that was like the big thing. So I feel like right before pandemic, I was finally finding how to be funny on stage purposefully, and now all that's gone. But that's gone.
No, dude, I don't think so, man. You were funny when I saw you a couple months ago, man. I don't think you've lost too much of that at all. I guess, so let me then ask, as far as like physically writing your joke, especially pertaining to your Trocadero joke, can you tell me like how the writing process goes? Is it very still Conan? One sentence, one punchline, and then you'll work it out from there?
Yeah, it's funny.
Can you kind of walk me specifically with that Trocadero joke, like how it kind of like developed, and then kind of tell me that much?
So that's one where like I had a lot of issues with. So like I ran that one by Chip before, and he kind of gave me that same advice of like, you know, if you're writing a story, like beat it out like, you know, one line, then try writing a punchline. It's like, okay, it's like stuff like I had already known, but it's like stuff that like you sometimes you get away from and you need to hear it again.
Yeah.
And I think it was like one of those things where it's like I knew the beats of the story and I knew the pertinent information, but I also knew the other stuff that made me laugh that wasn't as pertinent, but the laugh wasn't as like it didn't deserve to be in there.
Okay.
So it was like a slow process of removing all the things that I liked from the joke and just being more in the moment and like being more focused. Because like doing a lot of jokes with similes where you're like, oh, that's like this and that's like that and like that's like this, you can lose people quick if you have like 100 of them in one story. So it's just like more than in that moment. Then it was like leaning in on the attitude of the joke of like the nervousness of like basically like awaiting my execution and finding the different punchlines that way without going too off topic. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, well then can you walk me through how, like, I love that you said, like, I'm that chair's Vietnam, or you know, it's like, how did you get that? Because that works so perfectly in the structure of the joke. How did you get Vietnam? Like, where did that come from in that joke?
I think that came from like talking it through with Chip.
Okay.
We were just we were talking through a bunch of different scenarios, and there was a couple ones, and I can't remember if he said it first or I said it first, but we were both just talking about it and then trying to find ways to make it like Vietnam.
Okay.
And then it was like the like hearing the sounds all around you in the darkness. Like, I mean, that's like every war movie, right?
Yeah.
So it was just like just playing up on that a little bit. And it just came from like a situation of like, we like what's happening in that moment. It's like it's dark and we're watching a movie, but they still keep stopping the movie every time somebody falls. So then like, what else is this like? And it was just like going through all the different scenarios. And I'm sorry, I wish I had them all like listed in front of me about like, because I went through like a million different ways to try to say this. But that was the one that just kind of felt like most that rolled off the tongue the easiest, because there was like a million like contrived versions of it. But it was like watering it. I don't say watering it down, but getting it to Vietnam, because it's an experience we're all familiar with. And
I like that. And so tell me what, so I didn't know that Eddie was your date that evening, but you switched it to the joke for it being your wife. Is wife funnier than friend? Why switch the wife in the joke? And
because it was a mindful decision to switch it to wife, because then I could tie it into all the different failed dates and different bits I had with my wife at that moment, to turn it into like, a guy talking about his relationship with his wife and being like a doofus husband and all these different dates like that have gone wrong, then me trying to find a new way to shoehorn in me and a friend.
I like that, because then she goes to the concession stand, and what do you get? And you said, did you have balloons? Where does is that another thing that you and Chip are just talking back and forth, and that comes from that, or was it like a year after telling that joke you saw Up and go, oh my god, like where do these different pockets of hilarity come in, into the joke? Is it all at the same time in a conversation with Chip, or is it sporadic throughout the years kind of thing?
It was definitely sporadic. Like, I think that was like after just seeing Up, and I even think there's an instance where there is like a chair floating with balloons tied to it in that movie, and I think I remember. I think I was talking to Jeff Howarth on this one, and we used to go like walking at this track and talk through jokes and stuff as like just ideas we had, and it was just talking about different ways to like. I was talking about like the one line that I think I cut is that like I would put my arms out on the chairs like I was an Olympic ringist, that struggle thing. So like I had all these like different ones about ways I can like lighten the load, so to speak. And I think it just like then we just got talking about Up, and it was like it was just like dude, you should just tie the balloons to the chair. I'm like, you're not gonna have balloons at a movie night, but all right, this is silly, and let's do it. And
So when you get a joke like that, do you carry yourself around? This is more like the mechanics of like this is the stuff that just gets in my head. Do you carry around like a pocket notebook that as you talk out with Jeff, you're like, whoop, ow, Up, and you put that in a notebook or a phone, or how do you capture great ideas when you hear them? Like, or is your brain just work so well that you can remember for day, to the next day?
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, I'm terrible with memory.
Okay.
It's immediately pulling out a notebook and like writing it down.
So you do care. I mean, your notebooks are pretty thick. So you have like a pocket notebook that you like to use. Is that correct? Or do you use a phone?
There's a few pocket notebooks that I'll carry, or like Evernote on my phone, or some kind of app. Like I'll text myself a lot, and it's just capturing those moments immediately as they happen. That way I don't forget anything.
Okay. And then from this pocket notebook, you then have the notebooks that you sent me, these kind of leather-bound, more professional-looking notebooks. Is that where you're sitting down and you think about your experience at the Trocadero, and you write out the funny things, like around you chairs are falling, and you just write out things that could be funny, and then you take, and then do you take kind of like what you call bones? do you take them into a situation like an open mic?
Yeah, so it's just like, so I'll transfer it from the little book to like my joke writing book, which is where I'll write out the beats, and I'll try to write a punchline for each beat. Then take it to the mic, see how it does, listen for like that, like, you know, at open mics, it's like trying to be familiar enough with those rooms. Like, you want to go to different open mics because you're getting different crowds, but you also want to be familiar with the sounds of the room. So, like I know what I'm looking for in terms of like audience reaction. So it's just trying to get each punchline to at least line up with that.
Okay.
And then it's like, I'll do it the same way for about a week, like without even like tweaking it. I'll be thinking of different ideas and writing them down as I go throughout the week. But it's not like New York where you're going up 6-7 times a night.
Yeah.
I'm only getting up like, I might get up 6-7 times a week if I'm lucky for mics, because then the weekends, like the paid stuff where you're not supposed to be digging around.
Yeah.
So I would then listen to all the tapes from the week, because you're then listening to it instead of saying it on stage. Because you're saying it on stage, but you're in the active voice when that's happening. Like you're in the active brain when that's happening. Listening to it from like a passive setting of you just listening to it with headphones in. Sometimes like just taking a walk or something. It'll set off the part in your brain to like think of a tag. Because how many times have you watched somebody's set and they're saying a joke and you're like, oh, here's a tag, like, here's a tag, like, so it's like you're listening to somebody else, you try to like take yourself out of it and your ego and just like listen to it like you're listening to somebody else's set and try to think of a tag.
Okay. And then how do you prepare that joke to get on stage then with? Like, even at an open mic, do you go over it, or is it kind of like just from writing down the bullet points, like, how do you know what you're going to say when you're going to say it, like the first time that you may tell a joke?
Once I take it, once I put it in like my book, it'll probably go through like 1 or 2 like small revisions sometimes before. I get very like dead set on like this is a bad trait to have, but I get very dead set on like the structure immediately, like as soon as I write something. So sometimes it's a thing where I get hung on that for a few weeks, and I got to learn to like break that up and like switch it all around, because sometimes just moving like that ending to the beginning and like, you know, just switching out a middle piece or just taking out a middle piece makes all the difference in terms of the flow of the joke. So did I answer the question?
No, you did.
Or did I jump?
No, you did. Well, then let me ask you this then. How much does social media come into? Some comics like to test out premises on social media. I don't have Twitter. I have it, but but on Facebook, you don't seem to be that kind of comic on Facebook. Or are you like that more on Twitter? Or like, do you test out? Is there any kind of anonymous buy-in from the Twitterverse or whatever, or any other means that before you tell a joke that you get buy-in from? That's not Jeff.
I think I tested. I would say I tested more on Facebook than I do on Twitter.
Oh, you do?
I have a Twitter.
Okay.
I do. I just do it. I don't do it as frequently as other comics.
Okay.
I do it. I usually do that with like ideas that come into my head immediately and I get excited about. So I'll just like send them out and then see how it's received and see if there's anything I can build upon there. Okay. But like if I have like a funny idea of like, oh, this could be a joke, like a story thing, that's like, that's not something I'm tweeting because there's too much to put there, you know?
So the jokes that I look at when you send me are just like very just kind of sentences, kind of, you don't write out verbatim what you're going to say. So there is like almost this happy medium of part of it's written and part of it's kind of in the moment, feeling the crowd. Maybe like what you said, those kind of like awkward riffs or, you know, tags that just come out, like those, I think you call them accidental tags. Like, is it half written, half on stage? That's the formula to a Jake Mattera joke?
I would say it would be like 70-30 written.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I usually go on stage with an exact script of exactly what I want to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Okay.
And I've just learned to write conversationally. Like, I'm a terrible writer now because I've forgotten how to write like forgot grammar and like structure of like writing an essay and all that kind of stuff. Instead, it's just like I write so conversationally.
Yeah.
Like I work so hard on doing that by writing like a stream of conscious journal. Something like Mitch Hedberg did that I picked up on, and then just journaling all like my journal. I at least try to set that discipline up to like at least once a day of going through like the thoughts as they pop into my head and not letting my hand stop on the paper for at least 15 minutes.
Okay.
So you fill like 3-4 pages up that way in like books like I got like one of these right now that I'm working on. And it's just filling them up and then going back through that like frenzy of writing and trying to see if there's anything I could pull from that.
Okay.
And I think I shared examples of like random scribbles with like highlighted parts.
Yeah.
I think I did that, and that's kind of like what that is. That's me pulling from that.
You just brought up a question I want to ask you. What is your writing, like a daily writing? Do you have a daily writing process? How many times are you writing a week? You just talked about the stream of writing journal, but what is your, if you have one, daily commitment to comedy?
Yeah, on a daily basis, it's probably the stream of consciousness journal. That's what I'm doing every single day. If I can, the goal is to give yourself more time than that, like the 15 minutes. But, when you're working full time, you have a kid, all that kind of stuff, sometimes, life gets in the way, and there's a million other premises and things that I'm dying to work on. Like I have like ideas for jokes that are like 5-6 years old that I still haven't developed. That's driving me crazy. So it's like trying to take times and revisit old ideas when I have like once I get past the stream of consciousness and trying to work from those ideas and creating something and then moving on pretty quickly. I'm not going to lie because which I should probably sit in it a little bit longer, but ultimately I've sat in this stuff for a long time, but you know what I mean? So it's like, it's hard to justify, like when you have such a small window of writing, justify sitting in it. But sometimes that's what you gotta do.
Do you joke hop every day? Like a joke that you wrote on Monday, you'll write a different, like you'll maybe think of a different joke on Tuesday, and then you may revisit a different joke on Wednesday, or is it always? Are you working out that joke until you can put your stamp of approval on it until you can get it on stage? Is it juggling, or is it just one joke is in your head?
It's more joke hopping until one like magnetizes.
Okay.
And then I get fixated on it. Like I know it's going places. Like this year alone, like I've already written like 3 or 4 different things that I was excited about to make a bit, and I've already forgotten about 3 of them. I mean, they're all written down, but like revisiting them and being like, oh wow, yeah, there was something there that I was playing. Like, I think like I sent you an example of me like writing down the initial idea about like being an adult, feeling like a kid, and like how I'm just always eating Tums. I'm eating Tums so much, and like I should put it in a Pez dispenser because like I'm a child, and then like coming back to it, writing it all out again, and then like try rewriting it, and like try rewriting it, and because the comedy's in the rewriting, like most of for like the good jokes. So there was a situation where like I had like a half a page of just rambling about being an adult, feeling like a kid, and wanting Tums, to which the finished product, which I think I sent you, was like I'm an adult, but I still act like a kid. Like I'll carry Tums with me, but I'll carry them in a Pez dispenser. The wording is still still working.
I like the premise though.
Still new, but so it was like I felt like that's like a tighter joke now that I can build on like that whole premise after that.
So the one thing I want to talk about, and we're already talking about right now, is editing. And you made one of the things that I felt was the most passionate thing that you have ever said in one of your interviews was that you were almost no nonsense about, where did I put it here? Tightening. You said there's importance in tightening up jokes. You refer this back to your monologue writing days, if anything I've heard you talk about, the tightening of a joke seems to be where your biggest emphasis was in a joke writing process. What is you have a very strict process of what gets in your jokes and what gets, so tell me, how do you edit your jokes kind of thing?
I think it's more of like a mental mindset of that's exactly what I want to do, because I do feel like a lot of my jokes, especially my newer jokes, I do ramble a lot because I'm still trying to search for the punch. So I will ramble a lot while trying to find how to get through it. And it's making sure I finally, like, I know when to like pull the plug on all that rambling and just get to the meat of it.
Okay. Well, how do you get to that meat? Tell me what is your barometer on this gets in, this doesn't get in?
I think it's like accepting that these jokes that I like, accepting that the jokes are funny, but not the best like place for them, and just like telling myself to hang on to them for maybe like a later purpose. You know, like you can always reuse a joke that you cut somewhere else, if you frame it correctly. So just like letting myself have it for later, and ultimately, I think it's like that tightening comes from the crowd reaction and the crowd response I want. Like I want to do well. I want to like be successful at this. So getting a smattering of laughing through a 3-minute bit isn't worth like a pop at 30 seconds.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So it's just like, do you have a goal laugh rate? Do you like, someone's got to be laughing every 5 seconds or I'm scrapping this kind of thing? Is that kind of where your head goes?
I think it's just like trying to find the best possible punchline and immediately going there.
Okay.
And then if I can somehow build on that, that's a bonus. But if I'm like, I don't say phoning it in, but if I'm like meandering before I get to the big punch, it's like, know you're dicking around and cut that stuff so get to the funniest thing first and then tag it. Don't like try to be cute before you get there.
Okay, cool. And so when do you know a joke is done, or is a joke never done? Will you revisit the joke that you've been telling for 5 years and see, what can I do more with this? Or is there a process where you're like, check, I can put this in my headlining set, I don't need to revisit it, I can just go back and look at new stuff now? I
think it's like I would say the philosophy is like a joke is never done. That being said, I'm not like constantly rereading over like the Trocadero joke, looking for ways to improve it. I probably should be, but like I've put enough pain and struggle in that one. So what I do is like when I'm telling it, and I'm like, the more and more I tell it one way, and the more and more it works and my confidence grows with the way I'm doing it, I'm becoming more animated and confident.
That's it for my questions, like my point. These are now like the wrap up part. I kind of wrap up. I have 3 things I kind of wrap up with you with. And the one is, what is your ultimate goal? I wrote down here what I think it is, but what is your high watermark to achieve in comedy? It doesn't need to be. I know you have your hands in different buckets with improv and stand up and sketch, but like, what is your ultimate goal? What is the I can die now kind of goal?
What do you think it is? I'm curious.
I wrote SNL.
Oh wow, that's a bigger goal than I have for myself. Honestly, I haven't thought much past like a late night set. That would be, it would be my dream to go back to Conan to do a late night set. But unfortunately that's not going to happen because the show ends in June. And
but he does a podcast now, right? He's doing a
podcast, but yeah, that's like reserved for like A-list and who he wants to speak with. And he's going to be coming out with an HBO weekly show. A late night set. It doesn't hold the same gravitas as it did like when Gary Shandling was there, and like Ellen and like all those people getting called over to the couch. Like that doesn't exist anymore. But my high watermark would be getting a late night set, and after that, like I wouldn't know what to do with myself. And I have friends who've done it. I have friends who, like, in the past, the last Boston Comedy Festival that was in person, I was on the semifinals night with a buddy of mine, Pedro Gonzalez.
Yeah.
And he went first in the night. We were on the same lineup. He went first. I went sixth. I advanced. He did not. But he also left there that night and went directly to the airport, flew to Colbert, taped a show, then came back because he, like, I think, like, he thought, I mean, he's a very funny comic, and he very much deserved to be in that competition. So I thought he had a ticket coming back because it was a round trip book. So like, there's instances like that, and like Caitlin Palufo is an amazing comic, and a friend of mine. Like, you know, we're still doing bar shows, still doing rooftop shows, still doing Zoom shows. Andrew Ruffalo out in Oakland, same thing, had a cordon set. Mecky Leaper, like, it's not a game changer anymore, but it's just something like, it's something in my head. It's like, you've arrived.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay. Going back to that bucket list, how many items have you been able to cross off of those 20 besides now stand-up comedy? We know that's one.
Yeah. Marc, if I knew what was on that bucket list.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough. I'm going to ask you one question off camera, but the other one I want to
7 inches.
I want to end on it. You talked about Big Sky, and you said that you had a conversation with the guy that booked it and said, I really liked the video you sent, but I clicked on one of your sketches, and that's really what sold me. Would you recommend going further if you in these competitions, especially these kind of high level, like these high sought out county festivals? Is it important to have other stuff viewable to these bookers other than just one video that you were using to book with?
I think so. As long as you're proud of the thing and it's not just some like half-assed thing. I know that goes against kind of like all of my videos. They're all kind of like half-assed.
No, dude, they're hilarious, man.
As long as you're proud of the comedy in it, why not put it out? Because it could be the make or break moment. It could be the thing that, like, they just want to know a little bit more about you, and that could be it.
Cool, man. I like it. Well, cool, man. We're done.
That's it for me. Thank you so much.
Well, that's our interview with Jake. I know you enjoyed it. Please check out his comedy album, A Soft One. It is an incredible album that you won't regret getting. And also, please, once again, do me a favor. Subscribe to this channel. It helps me out so much. Leave me a comment. I will get back to you. And check me out live at a show, which you can see at my website, markstod.com. Till next time, I'm Marc Stoudemire. Goodbye.